Now coming to the next contradiction, which is how do planets communicate? It is strange to say that the planets communicate with each other, but they do. This is a very stable system. As we see, we have our own sun and its 8 planets going around it, and there is not much of a difference between the distance that is there or for that matter mass. It's a very stable structure. Now what happens when you bring a third mass? What happens when you disturb this stable system? You either bring a third mass, remove one mass, switch the masses together, there will be chaos. Each of the planets reacts to different changes around them, and it is very well seen. So that means planets are communicating, and if you take Newton's theorem, there is no space. So for communication, space is a must. So that is the contradiction with Newton's theorem. And coming to Einstein's theorem, thanks to this gradient, space is there to communicate. It is telling the other mass how to move. But as we said, when you have an exact replica, when the gradients are similar, each mass is blind to the other. They would just guide across. It should not happen. This is the contradiction. Or for that matter, as we discussed, when the sun's mass is reduced to the same as the other planets, they would just roll off the fabric of universe. And you would also see that the gravity is almost negligent when it comes to the molecular level.
The next contradiction is how do planets communicate? In classic model of universe, when you started with Newton's theorem, he completely discounted space as a factor, and it was very difficult to establish a theory as to how these two planets would communicate because there was no space. So when you add or remove or rearrange masses in a solar system or any for that matter any planetary system, the resultant chaos was unexplained. This was improved in case of Einstein's theorem, wherein it was suggested that massive masses have a tendency to bend the space-time around it, and that bent space leads to a gradient. That gradient is the one which is going to guide all the small masses which are going around it. So the communication was easier because there was a gradient, but the issue was a hypothetical case wherein there are twin masses. In the sense, there are two masses which are exact replica of each other, so that means both are having the same influence or bending the space to the same extent, and hence would they, when they come near each other, would they be blind to each other and just glide by? Or for that matter, when you have these smaller masses, planets which are of the same mass, would they just roll off the fabric of space? So now let us understand how spacity helps planets communicate. The good thing about spacity is you do not need a gradient for communication. The mandate of space itself establishes a communication. The space is supposed to bring the masses together, hold the masses together, bring the masses together and act on them. That itself establishes how the planets are going to communicate. They will be communicating through the space forces S1, S2 and S3. And when it comes to the nature of masses, as we have seen in space, the spacity theory, if they are twin masses, it would not bother. It would just bring them together. The play of S2 would still act. Whether they are same masses, it would still hold the solar system together. Whether the masses are in static condition, motion condition, whether there is a massive sun or a massive mass at the center or a not so massive mass at the center. Like in the case of solar system, you have a massive mass, comparatively massive, whereas in galaxy you have a comparatively less massive mass at the center, or no mass at the center at all. It would still be able to handle such theoretical effects. And one thing that we should understand here is that two bodies, whichever bodies that you take, they never exist in isolation in the universe. whenever you measure a value that these two masses are coming together, you cannot discount the effect of the universe on these two masses. The measured values have a component which has the effect of the universe already built in.